If you've ever been uninvited from your own family's Christmas, listen carefully. 3 days before Christmas, my brother called and said I shouldn't come, that my presence felt too heavy for his girlfriend's energy. An hour later, my mother added gently, "If you show up, we might not answer the door." They didn't say you've been paying the mortgage. They didn't say you were the one who fixed the roof, who bought the plane tickets, who kept this family running. They just shut me out, like I was a disturbance, like I didn't belong, I didn't argue, I didn't explain. I went home, opened my banking app, and turned off every silent act of support they never acknowledged. Mortgage gone, backup fund. Locked my silence. That was the only gift they'd get that year. Have you ever carried a family for years, only to be told you're too much for the holidays? If you've ever been the quiet one who always showed up, drop a number 1 in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't just about Christmas. It's about what happens when the invisible one finally walks away. I used to think the way my family treated me was normal, that maybe I was just too serious, too focused, too much. Growing up, I was the oldest, the trial run, as my dad once joked at a barbecue, right before handing Ethan the bigger slice of cake. Ethan was the miracle baby, the golden boy. Creative, charismatic, the one they always said felt things deeply. Me, I was just the one who did everything right. Quietly, when Ethan was 6, he drew all over the living room wall with permanent marker. My parents called it expressive. When I dropped a bowl while helping set the table, I was careless. When Ethan brought home a participation ribbon, it stayed on the fridge for a week. When I got straight A's, my report card was folded, slid into a drawer, and forgotten. I once left my perfect GPA report on the kitchen counter just to see if anyone would say something. No one did when I got into medical school first round. No gap year, I printed the acceptance letter and showed it to my mom. She said, "Wow, that's intense. You'll have to be careful not to burn out." When Ethan dropped out of college for the 3rd time to pursue creative direction, they threw him a re-entry party, balloons, cake. There's a framed photo of him holding a paintbrush in the hallway. You'd think he cured cancer. I used to draw too. There was a sketchbook I kept under my bed one day. I found it in the recycling bin, buried under grocery store flyers. When I asked, my mom said, "Oh, I thought it was scrap paper." Still, I kept going. I graduated early, got licensed, started working with elderly patients, people who'd been forgotten, dismissed, left behind. I gave them my time, my care, my whole heart. And at home, I gave just as quietly. When their water heater broke in February, I paid the plumber. No one asked, I just did it. When I saw their bank account in overdraft, I transferred money before they even noticed. When Ethan said he was strapped after buying new camera gear, I bought his Thanksgiving plane ticket. Didn't ask for the money back, didn't even bring it up. When my mom couldn't cover her copay for physical therapy, I paid it. When Ethan called stranded on the side of the road with a dead battery, I bought him a new one that week. I thought being useful meant being valued. That if I kept showing up, if I kept helping, someone would notice. They didn't. They only noticed what I made uncomfortable, my silence, my presence. The fact that I didn't drink at holidays because I had a 6 a.m. shift, or that I didn't laugh at Ethan's stories because I was tired from holding the hand of someone who'd just lost their spouse. They called it heavy. I called it real life. But every year I still showed up for Christmas, wrapped gifts, made their favorite rosemary stuffing. Even though no one ever remembered I was the one who made it, I bought a new sweater this year. Forest green, soft, simple. Just festive enough, I thought. Maybe this time I'd feel like I belonged. Instead, they told me not to come, and for the first time in my life, I listened. I didn't fight it, didn't beg, didn't even ask why. When they told me not to come to Christmas, I just said, "Okay." Then I walked over to my desk, sat down, opened my banking app. $800. That was the monthly top-up I'd been sending to help cover my parents' mortgage. Gone, canceled. $400. That was my rainy day transfer into a side account I kept just in case they had a medical emergency. Locked. Were $200. That was what Ethan still owed me from last spring. I knew I'd never see it again. But from that moment on, I promised myself not another cent. There was no post, no message, no family group chat, farewell, just silence. And for the first time in years, that silence felt like mine. Christmas came and went. I didn't open the gifts I'd already wrapped, didn't light the tree, didn't bake, didn't cry. I sat in my apartment, tea in hand, wrapped in the blanket I'd washed the night before, the one that still faintly smelled like rosemary and softener. No noise, no performance, just stillness. But the next morning my phone buzzed. Not once, 3 times. Call from Mom, ignored. Call from Ethan, ignored. Text from Mom, can you answer? You've done enough damage already? My stomach twisted. I hadn't even been there. And somehow I'd ruined Christmas. Later that afternoon, my Aunt Clara called. She's the only one in the family who still sends birthday cards, the kind with handwritten notes and little pressed flowers taped inside. She spoke softly. They're saying you ruined everything. But Rachel, you weren't even there. What happened, I didn't know. Until later that evening when Clara called again. Apparently, Chloe, Ethan's girlfriend, was in the living room when she saw a framed photo of me on the bookshelf. Just an old birthday snapshot, nothing special. She paused, then said, "Is that Dr. Rachel Linwood?" The room froze. She saved my grandmother. Chloe said, "That's her." From there, the story got fuzzy. Clara didn't know exactly what was said. But Chloe had asked, "Wait, is this the sister you said wasn't coming?" And something about the answer changed everything. Chloe gathered her things, left early, didn't even take dessert. That same night she made a post online, nothing dramatic, nothing angry, just honest. She talked about sitting in a family gathering full of polite smiles and beautiful lights, only to hear people mocking a woman she admired, a woman who had changed her family's life. She didn't name names, didn't have to. One line stood out: some people hide cruelty behind holiday lights. But I remember what real kindness looks like. And just like that, it went viral. People in Chloe's circle started commenting, tagging others, sharing the story. And for the first time, none of those voices were calling me difficult. None were saying I was too serious or too intense. They were saying I mattered, that I'd done something good, that I'd made a difference. The next night, just before I went to bed, I got a voicemail. Not from Mom, not from Ethan. Not from Dad, who only ever calls when he needs help resetting his email password. It was from Chloe. Her voice was softer than I expected, less polished than in her videos, more real. "Hi, I'm so sorry to reach out like this. I got your number from your aunt. I hope that's okay. I needed to say something." Long pause. "I didn't really know who you were. But I recognized your photo. You treated my grandmother years ago. She still talks about you. She says, you changed everything." Another pause. "She said you were kind, present, that you made her feel like she mattered." Her voice cracked a little. "I'm sorry about what was said. I didn't know. I just couldn't sit there and pretend, so I left." Click. I listened to it 3 times. Then again, and for the first time in a long, long time, I cried. Not because I was hurt, not because I felt betrayed. I cried because finally someone saw me. Really saw me. Not through the lens of family expectations. Not as the serious one or the shadow behind Ethan. Just as me. 3 days later, a small package arrived. No return address, just my name written in steady handwriting. Inside was a letter, thick ivory paper ink, slightly smudged at the edges. It was from Chloe. She told me more about her grandmother, how she still practiced yoga twice a week, how she walked to the farmer's market every Saturday, how she still told the story of the young doctor who held her hand and said, "You're not done yet." And then Chloe wrote something that stopped me cold. She said, "You didn't just save her life. You reminded me what strength looks like. You were the first person who made me feel safe in a hospital room." I framed that letter, hung it beside my desk, the same desk where I finished patient notes every evening. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Not to my parents, not to Ethan, not to anyone. But just when I thought the dust had settled, my inbox lit up. Subject line, "Let's reset things." It was an email, signed by all 3 of them. Mom, Dad, Ethan. A united front. Like they were submitting a group project. The tone. Exactly what I expected from people who believed apologies were a form of negotiation. They didn't say, "Sorry, not really." They said, "We regret how things may have been perceived." Translation. We still think we're right, but we're afraid of what this is doing to our image. Buried in paragraph 4 was the real ask. They'd appreciate it if I could reach out to Chloe, ask her to take down the post, help clear the air, protect Ethan's future in creative spaces. There it was. The reason for the sudden olive branch. It wasn't about healing. It wasn't about understanding. It was about optics. They wanted me to be their mop, to clean up the mess they made. One more time, but I didn't reply. That night, as I closed my laptop, I made a quiet promise to myself. No more covering, no more rescuing, no more fixing what they refused to even acknowledge. Because I finally understood something. I wasn't created to make them comfortable. I wasn't born to cushion their mistakes. I was made for something else, to hold the hands of the dying, to listen when no one else would, to stay present in rooms where others walk away. That's what I do. That's who I am. And I no longer needed their permission to be that person. Their silence didn't define me anymore, because someone outside that house, full of polite cruelty, had finally looked past the noise and seen me. The next morning, things escalated. Not a message, not a conversation, a move. My father, Greg Linwood, called someone at my hospital, a department administrator he'd met once at a charity event years ago. He told him he was concerned about my mental state. Said I'd been emotional withdrawn, that I might be heading for burnout. Suggested someone should check in. It wasn't just manipulative, it was calculated. They weren't trying to talk to me, they were trying to discredit me, gaslight me through my job. Luckily, the administrator didn't buy it. He called me directly, apologized for even needing to mention it, said he knew what this was and that I didn't need to worry, but I was furious. Not just at the attack, but at the desperation of it. They weren't reaching out to reconcile. They were attacking what I had built. The one place where I was respected, where I mattered, and they didn't stop there. A group text went out next, sent to extended family cousins, aunts, people I hadn't heard from in years. The message crafted, perfectly vague, no mention of me being excluded from Christmas, no mention of the years of silent giving. Just, we're very worried about Rachel, she's distancing herself. It's tearing the family apart. And just like that, the damage began to spread. I got a DM from a cousin in Florida. She asked if I needed space and sent me a voucher to a yoga retreat. Another cousin messaged, forgiveness is powerful. Maybe just talk to them. Forgiveness, I had done nothing to ask for it. But the worst, the final move, they came to my door. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. I'd just come home from a morning shift, still in scrubs, still carrying the scent of antiseptic and winter air. I heard the knock, peeked through the peephole. There they were, all three, Mom, Dad, Ethan. No warning, no call, just there. I opened the door, didn't unchain it, just leaned against the frame. My mom spoke first. Her voice was soft, like she thought if she whispered, I'd forget everything that had happened. We just want to talk, she said. I didn't move. Didn't speak because by then I finally understood something. They weren't there for me. They were there for the version of me who used to fold. The version who used to clean up the mess. Smooth things over. Keep the peace. That version no longer lived here, so I looked at them, really looked. At the parents who always noticed Ethan's victories and never mine. At the brother who asked me to stay away so his girlfriend wouldn't feel my heavy energy. At the family that saw my silence as permission, my giving as invisible, and my boundaries as betrayal. Then I said one word. No, no explanation, no yelling, no tears, no performance, just that. No. Then I closed the door, and I didn't feel guilty. I made myself a cup of tea, sat down at my desk, and looked at Chloe's letter hanging in its wooden frame. She'd seen me not as a label, not as a role, but as a person. And that moment, that knowing, that mattered more than any forced apology ever could. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not show up, not explain, not try to fix what they've already decided to break. Sometimes you take your hands off the rope and you let them feel the weight of everything they never noticed you were holding. After that Sunday, the door stayed closed, both literally and metaphorically. There were no more knocks, no more emails, no more performative texts pretending to care. What came instead was silence, but this time, not mine. Their silence was different. It was frantic, desperate. Not the kind that holds peace, but the kind that scrambles for control. They had run out of ways to manipulate me, so they turned inward, tried to patch up their image in the only way they knew how, by shifting blame. But Chloe had already spoken, and people had listened. Her post Still Live was now being shared by health advocates, elder care groups, even a few small media accounts that spotlighted kindness in healthcare. She never mentioned my name directly, never detailed the Christmas disaster, but her story had weight because it was honest, and people could feel that. Meanwhile, Ethan's online portfolio went suspiciously quiet. Brand inquiries dried up the New York design studio he'd been interviewing with. Pulled back after someone forwarded Chloe's post, and that, I think, is when my family realized this wasn't going away. So they tried one last strategy: redemption through narrative. They began telling people we'd had a miscommunication, that tensions were high, and that I overreacted. The classic rewrite, but people weren't buying it. You can only reshape the truth so many times before it bends back against you. I got one last voicemail from my mother. Her voice was tired this time. Not soft, not sweet, just tired, she said. "We didn't know this would spiral like this. We just wanted a quiet holiday. You've made everything so public." I almost laughed. I hadn't said a single word publicly. Not a post, not a comment, not even a whispered retelling. The only thing I had done was stop showing up, and somehow that was more powerful than all the years I spent bending over backward to please them. Because when you stop playing your assigned role, the entire performance collapses. They didn't know what to do without me silently filling in the gaps, paying bills, covering for Ethan, carrying emotional weight they never acknowledged. So they collapsed, under the very weight they claimed I had brought. That's the part they didn't expect. That I could disappear without making a scene and still be felt louder than ever. That I could say nothing and still be heard. That I could walk away, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in peace. A peace they couldn't touch, a boundary they couldn't cross. And I didn't feel cold, I didn't feel cruel, I felt free. Because when you've been invisible for long enough and someone finally sees you, really sees you, you never go back to dimming your light, just to keep others comfortable. So I brewed another cup of tea, sat back down at my desk, and returned to my patient notes. A woman I'd treated earlier that day had held my hand and said, "You're the only one who listens, the only one who doesn't look away," and I smiled. Because that's who I am, not the daughter they wanted to reshape. Not the sister they tried to erase, not the fixer they depended on only in secret. Just me, present, real, unapologetic. And finally seen. People always assume that walking away is dramatic. Loud, final, chaotic. Like packing your things in the middle of the night, screaming, crying, slamming a door so hard the frame splinters. But that's not how it happens for most of us. Sometimes walking away is quiet. Sometimes it's just not showing up, not answering, not explaining, not fixing. And sometimes it's sitting at your desk with a hot mug of tea reading a letter from a woman you barely know who saw you more clearly than your own family ever did. That's how it was for me. I didn't leave to make a statement. I left because I finally realized I had nothing left to prove. I had spent decades trying to earn a seat at a table that was never built for me. A table where silence was praised, vulnerability mocked, and my worth was measured only by how useful I could be, but never how human I was allowed to be. I used to think love looked like sacrifice, like staying quiet, like saying yes, even when you wanted to scream, like paying bills in the background and pretending it didn't matter when no one said thank you. But love without respect is just control wrapped in guilt. And I had swallowed enough of that kind of love to last me a lifetime, what Chloe gave me that Christmas without even knowing. It was permission to choose something different. She didn't try to fix anything. She didn't try to get me to come back. She didn't tell me to forgive and forget. She just saw me. She saw the tiredness in my eyes, years after I had held her grandmother's hand. She saw the depth of my work, the integrity in it, and she gave it a name that no one in my family ever did: kindness. And that one act, that one moment of acknowledgement, was enough to break the spell. Because when you're raised in a system where love is conditional, you start to believe that your pain is your fault. That being too much is the reason they shut the door. That if you could just shrink a little more, smile a little wider, ask for a little less, then maybe this time they'd let you in, but they won't, because it was never about you. It was about the version of you. They were comfortable with the version that made them feel strong, important, in control. When I stopped playing that version, when I stopped nodding and fixing and giving without being seen, the mask fell off. And that's when I understood the truth. I wasn't difficult, I wasn't cold, I wasn't heavy. I was just no longer willing to be invisible. It's funny, isn't it? The moment you become unapologetically yourself, the moment you say no without justifying it, people panic, not because you've hurt them, but because they've lost access to the version of you they could control. So they rewrite the story, call you unstable, call you selfish, call you ungrateful. But I've learned you don't owe people the version of yourself that keeps them comfortable at your expense. You owe yourself the truth. And the truth is, I'm not the daughter who folds. I'm not the sister who smooths things over. I'm not the fixer who puts herself last just to keep the illusion of family intact. I am Rachel Linwood, a doctor, a listener, a witness to hundreds of final breaths, a woman who has stayed in hospital rooms long after the chart was closed, just to make sure no one died alone. I was never the heavy presence, I was the one carrying weight. Everyone else refused to acknowledge, and I'm done pretending that isn't something to be proud of these days. Christmas looks different. There's no tree in my apartment. No rosemary stuffing in the oven, but there's peace. Real peace. I still have the blanket from that night, the one I wrapped around myself when the phone call stopped and the silence began. It's worn at the edges now, but I keep it close because it reminds me of something simple, something true. Sometimes the most powerful decision you can make is to stop trying to be loved by people who only love you when you're convenient, and instead start loving yourself exactly as you are. So if you've ever been called too serious, too intense, or made to feel like your presence ruins the party, I want you to know something. You are not the problem, you are not too much, and you never needed to earn the love that should have been given freely. You didn't walk away because you were cold. You walked away because they left you no other choice. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do, the bravest, most life-changing thing is to say, this is enough, because peace isn't found in pleasing everyone. Peace is found in no longer needing their permission to exist. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever been made to feel invisible by the people who should have seen you, most leave a comment. Drop a #1 if you've ever chosen silence over suffering. And don't forget to subscribe to EN True Tales for more true stories that remind us sometimes the quietest choices carry the loudest truths.